A congressman was carjacked last night in Washington. D.C. is a failed non-state. Also, Karine Jean-Pierre squares off with Peter Doocy. You're going to want to see this fiery exchange. Arnold Schwarzenegger is a very strict parent. He told Jimmy Kimmel all about it. And New York is really fed up with illegal aliens. Imagine how Texas feels. And a feel-good story from an NFL quarterback that you won't see on ESPN coming up next. Democrat Congressman Henry Cuellar of Texas was carjacked at gunpoint just a few miles away from the Capitol last night. This morning, he reacted to the violent crime in the nation's capital.
This happened less than a mile away from the Capitol. And my place, you got our leader, Hakeem, there, Catherine Clark, that lives there, a whole bunch of members that live in that place. So I'll leave that up to the police, but on that.
Leaving it up to the police. Yeah, that would be the same police that have been defunded in major cities like Washington, D.C. by Mr. Cuellar's counterparts, Democrat mayors. Democrats getting violently attacked in Washington, D.C. is not just a one-off. It's actually a pattern of behavior. Take a look at these crimes just in the last year or so. Of course, we've got last night's carjacking of Representative Cuellar. Then we've got Representative Mary Gay Scanlon carjacked at gunpoint up in Philadelphia. Representative Cori Bush's car was hit by gunfire back in her district in Missouri. And Representative Angie Craig was attacked in her apartment building here in the District of Columbia. That was on the day that she was headed to Capitol Hill to vote on the D.C. crime bill. Also, a staffer for Rand Paul was stabbed in the head, again, just blocks from the Capitol building. This is an epidemic in Washington, D.C. The violent crime is absolutely out of control. The mayor of D.C. yesterday, Muriel Bowser, again, a Democrat, she spoke out about the fact that they are several hundred police officers short of their minimum number to operate this town.
We need more officers. We don't have the officers that we need, and sadly, we've lost 300 to 400 officers in the last 4 years. We haven't had officers in our schools, and we have policies that make it difficult to recruit new officers.
Policy problem? Whose policies could those be? Could it be the mayor's policy? You see, the mayor, a Democrat, works with the district council, which is, and I'm not overstating the case, 100% dominated by the mayor's party. That would be, again, the Democrats. You know, the victim last night, as I mentioned, was a Democrat. This is a constant theme here, not just in Washington, D.C., but all across the country. Democrats in Washington, D.C. literally control everything. If there's a policy problem, it's their policy. And when Muriel Bowser is complaining about it, well, that's kind of rich. Because back in 2020, when the city was overtaken by the Black Lives Matter Antifa riots that saw arson and looting and innocent people injured and stores destroyed, Muriel Bowser's answer was to paint Black Lives Matter as a mural across the street where all of the violence took place. And here's another beautiful mural that they put forth. See, there's the D.C. flag. Isn't that great? It says defund the police. You know, you're the mayor of a major city. You send that message out by literally painting it and emblazing it across the street of your town, and you wonder why people don't want to volunteer and become a cop in your city, why people aren't interested in putting their lives on the line in a violent atmosphere while the mayor and the district council and every elected official is trying to defund them. And meanwhile, every Democrat in power, they're screaming about statehood. They want to be a state? They're a completely dysfunctional city. Why would we let them be a state? And that's where Senator Mike Lee's tweet from last night comes into play. Take a look at this. Time to invoke Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Well, that's kind of cryptic. What exactly is Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17? Let's take a look, shall we? Yes, the Enclave Clause. You can see right here, it gives Congress the power to exercise exclusive legislation over the District of Columbia. Are you telling me that Congress is in charge of this city? Congress is the problem? Well, no. You see, several decades ago, they passed something here in Washington called the Home Rule provision. It allowed for the mayor and the district council to really sort of run their own affairs, and Congress only had veto power, oversight, but they didn't really control things. And I think it's fair to say that the home rule experiment has failed. As Senator Lee says, it's time for Congress to take back their rightful constitutional responsibility that the founders envisioned over D.C. And if you're sitting back in whatever city you're living in right now and you think to yourself, to hell with them, they get what they deserve, they get what they voted for, why should I care about D.C. being a basket case? Well, I need you to recognize something. This is your nation's capital. Every single citizen in this country has the right to come here and petition their government and talk to their representatives without having to look over their shoulder for fear of their life. This is your city, and through your representative, you can take it back. You know, there's probably only one other city in America that rivals Washington, D.C. with regard to Democrats having complete and total dominance. That would be Portland, Oregon. You know what? Let's take a look and see what's going on in Portland there with regard to crime. Look, here's a tweet from the commissioner of Portland, Renee Gonzalez. Our 911 system is getting hammered this morning with multiple person incident, multiple overdoses in Northwest Park blocks. Don't call 911 except in the event of life or death emergencies. Are you kidding me? It's so bad there. They're getting inundated with 911 calls that somebody has to go out on social media and beg people not to call unless it's life or death. These cities are broken. Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, and I'm not going to say his full name again because I barely got it out that time. He's killing it this year in the NFL. If you've got him on your fantasy team, you should be starting him every week. But this isn't really about his performance on the field. It's about the kind of man that he is. After his team's loss to the Buffalo Bills this weekend, he spoke at the postgame press conference from the heart about his deep and abiding faith. You're going to like this. Take a look.
The best thing about being a believer of Jesus Christ, like to me, is that good Lord up above doesn't care whether you win a game, whether you lose a game. And for me, it's been a little tough having to play on Sundays, having to understand that, not able to go to church. Really, a lot of it is having to watch church online after games and things like that. But allowing me this platform, is, to me, is the best thing in the world, to be able to profess my faith, something that I firmly believe in, something that's been foundationally instilled in me at a young age. And, when I'm out there, like, I even pray before I go out to series and whatnot. Like, I'm always praying, like I'm on a sideline, looks like I'm talking to myself, speaking in tongues. Like, some people think, what, this guy knows how to speak in tongues? I mean, I grew up in a non-denominational Christian church my entire life. So yeah, like that, I mean, it does a lot. And so having to remember Scripture always keeps me encouraged in continuing to press forward, especially in times like this.
See, now that's beautiful. I love that. Don't you love that? Don't you wish you saw more professional athletes displaying themselves and wearing their heart on their sleeve like that? The fact is, I have a hunch that they do more often than you can imagine. You see, the problem is that video went viral on social media because one guy, Clay Travis, actually put it out there, and his commentary was pretty important. He said, why doesn't ESPN or Fox Sports or CBS Sports or any of the major broadcast networks, why don't they show us more of this? Why don't they show us something about these athletes that actually make us proud of them and make us want to embrace them and support them? If he had jumped out there and started screaming about systemic racism or complaining about the police and whatever the complaint of the day is in today's society, that would have gotten a lot of play. That would have been everywhere. But here he is as a humble man talking about his love of his God and his faith and how it guides him every day in his life. And, well, they have no time for that. Meanwhile, if you did tune in to the sports channels this weekend, you saw this kind of exchange about the quarterback of the New York Jets.
Was Zach better tonight than what you anticipated he would be watching him on tape? And you could be honest.
Honestly, if I'm being completely honest, we knew it was going to be a battle. He's continuing to get better week in and week out, and he's continued to lead week in and week out.
But watching that tape, man, you got to look at this dude and say, oh, he is garbage. Like, we should really tear him apart.
Earlier, like I said, Zach Wilson is special, man. You just got to give the guy time. You know what I mean?
Wait. Did you say Zach Wilson is special?
Yeah.
I think he had a special night, but I don't think he's special. I've got to prove that you're special. Because you proved it over a course of time. He's not special. I'm just saying, Chris.
Hey, listen.
I'm just saying.
You mentioned one word, accountability. Let's understand who this young man is before we ask him to accept accountability. He's a young man who grew up with a lot of money. I don't think he's ever had to accept accountability. And so now on the biggest stage, we want this quarterback to accept accountability.
That doesn't resonate at all. I mean, he's a tough-minded kid. He's come through. I mean, everyone's
never had to
challenge. I mean,
he hasn't had to accept the accountability, and so now on the biggest stage, we want this kid to be an adult in front of grown men and accept accountability.
You know, here's the thing. We Americans, we sports fans, we want to love our team. We want to love our favorite sport. We keep trying to come back, even after Colin Kaepernick and after putting all of these political slogans all over the field and on the players' jerseys. We keep coming back because we love the sport. And the people in charge of broadcasting these sports, they keep pushing us away. Why? Why not show us something great and positive about these teams? We want to be fans. White House correspondent Peter Doocy for Fox News had his first chance to ask Karine Jean-Pierre about the fire alarm situation on Capitol Hill, and it went about how you'd expect.
Would President Biden ever try to get out of a meeting by pulling a fire alarm?
Are you talking about something specifically?
A Democratic member of Congress pulled a fire alarm around a series of votes. No fire. Is that appropriate?
What I can tell you is I've not spoken to the president about this. And so just not going to comment. I would leave it up to, I know there's a House process moving forward right now. I'll leave it to the House.
What's she laughing about? This is actually a violation of federal law and D.C. law, and it created a panic. And some would say that it was obstruction of a congressional proceeding, which, as we know, punishable by multiple years in jail. How has she not talked to the president about this? It's what everybody was talking about for the last 3 days. Let's see what else happened in this Q&A with Doocy and KJP.
Since President Biden is so pro-union, is he okay with 75,000 healthcare workers possibly walking off the job this week?
What I can tell you is that, and I've said this many times already this morning, the president believes all workers, including healthcare workers and those that make their work possible, they deserve a fair pay. And they deserve a fair benefit. That's what the president believes. He believes that collective bargaining works. That is, we've seen that play out in the past even couple of months. We think about the Teamsters. You think about the Teamsters and the UPS. You think about the West Coast ports, right? We see that play out. And so it is important that we see that continue. And I'll have to say, like the Treasury Department laid out recently a major report that unions and collective bargaining are good for the overall economy and help raise wages for everybody, whether they are a union member or not. And I think that matters.
See, here's the problem. This is a man who ran for president saying that he'd be the most pro-union president in history. And of course, the reason he did that is not because in his heart of hearts he believes in the union movement and the labor movement. No, it's so he could get a ton of money from these unions and, even more importantly, organization from the unions. They're the ones who get out the vote, usually by strong-arming their own membership. But when you signal that you're so pro-union, then anytime you do have a labor conflict, it's obvious that you're on the side of the union. So this isn't really a negotiation, is it? Every single time a union starts to strike against the federal government, Joe Biden has already signaled that he's on their side. And that's not fair. Not fair to the people who are negotiating against those unions. They have a right to have a fair negotiation too, don't they?
Would you consider joining them on the picket line if they strike?
Look, I don't have anything else to share on the president's schedule. What I can say is that when we see this type of collective bargaining, when we see this type of, the report that I just laid out, when unions and unions do collective bargaining, it actually helps our economy overall, and it raises wages. And I think that's important for all, not just union members, also non-union members.
Just so you know, raising wages across the board for everybody means that the costs of goods and services go up for everyone. This is another way inflation rears its head. You always wonder, why are prices going up? Well, whenever you're on the side of people making more money in wages, whether they deserve it or not, or whether the market forces demand it or not, that just means that prices go up because somebody's paying those wages. You're paying those wages when you buy the product or buy the service. Doesn't anyone at the White House understand basic economics? Answer is no.
And a couple days ago, looters were terrorizing businesses in Philadelphia. What is the White House doing about that?
So obviously, any coordinated theft and vandalism that occurred in Philadelphia is destructive and simply unacceptable. That's what we say. We've always said that. Any type of vandalism, any type of violence, we certainly denounce that from here. The acts of these individuals harmed local businesses, as we saw in the communities that depend on them. But I also want to be clear because the police commissioner in Philadelphia did say, and he said this on the record, that looting was the act of opportunists taking advantage of an unrelated protest. But obviously, and we have been very consistent here when it comes to any sort of vandalism, certainly looting or any type of violence. We are going to simply condemn that, and it is unacceptable.
Yes, that's right. They've always consistently condemned violence and looting. I mean, except when the Vice President, Kamala Harris, was actually raising money to post bail for looters and rioters back in 2020. No, the president hasn't consistently condemned this. In fact, he hasn't said a damn thing about what happened in Philadelphia. He just sent Karine Jean-Pierre to give her mealy-mouthed answer that you just saw. And isn't this the party that consistently says that riots are the language of the unheard? They're enabling this behavior because they generally benefit politically from it. Just look at the summer of 2020 and how it was somehow Donald Trump's fault that cities were burning down. They actually benefit from this. They actually love this kind of thing. It turns out New York City is a border town because they're dealing with an invasion of illegal immigrants. And I know we're not supposed to use language like that. It's xenophobic and all that jazz.
At what point does this become an invasion of our country?
Well, I would never use that word. Not an invasion. This is not some pests. These are human beings, and that's the way they need to be treated.
Just take a listen to how the governor of New York is responding to the current crisis.
Well, we want them to have a limit on who can come across the border. It is too open right now. People coming from all over the world are finding their way through, simply saying they need asylum, and the majority of them seem to be ending up in the streets of New York, and that is a real problem for New York City. 125,000 newly arrived individuals, and we are being taxed. Now, we are always so proud of the fact that New York has the Statue of Liberty in our harbor. We are one of the most diverse places on earth because of our welcoming nature, and it's in our DNA to welcome immigrants. But there has to be some limits in place, and Congress has to put more controls at the border, and not in this budget threat, shutdown threat. Talk about eliminating positions for Border Patrol when we actually need to double or quadruple those numbers. So get back to work and do your jobs.
The border is too open? Wait a second. I thought the Biden administration said that the border was closed. I'm quite sure that's what they said recently. We've got to limit the number of people who are coming into the country, that people are claiming asylum and they're not really eligible. What is with all the xenophobia coming from the good Democrat governor? That's kind of racist. That's not who we are. But it's not just her. Just take a listen to the chief advisor to Eric Adams, the mayor of New York.
How would you see it and the administration see it really alleviating some of the crisis?
Well, it would alleviate it to the extent that, first of all, others wouldn't be so ready and able to come to New York City because they would know, number one, okay, they're not going to provide us with shelter.
Okay.
So that would hopefully stop some people from coming in.
Slow down the process.
Yes. It's still a problem because we do have in excess of 61,400 migrants who are here, and we're caring for them. Fortunately, all 118,000 who have come through our doors and graced us with their presence didn't stay. Mm-hmm. But we still have to find a way to get them to understand we are no longer responsible for you, so you need to find other means. go to another state. However, I have to keep drumming this in, and I'm going to keep going back to this same point. The federal government needs to do its job. We need the federal government, the Congress members, the Senate, and the president to do its job. Close the borders. And until you close the borders, you need to come up with a full-on decompression strategy where you can take all of our migrants and move them throughout our 50 states. We have 50 states.
Do your job and close the borders. What about welcoming people with open arms from all around the world? I thought New York City was a sanctuary city. That's what sanctuary is supposed to mean, isn't it? Even former President Bill Clinton has said that New York has to rescind their sanctuary city policies and do away with a law recently passed that promises shelter to anyone who shows up in Gotham and takes up residence on the city sidewalks. When Bill Clinton thinks it's a problem, when Bill Clinton thinks you've gone too far crazy to the left, you know you've got a serious issue. Let's let a Republican from the state of New York have the last word here.
Heard my colleague from New York City say that this was cruel, that we want to secure our borders. You know what's cruel? In New York City yesterday at one of the migrant shelters, a 7-year-old girl was sexually abused. You know what's cruel? That somebody was stabbed at the Roosevelt shelter in Manhattan. The fact that there are dozens of crimes being committed and our mayor and you guys are doing nothing about it.
Did you ever imagine what it might be like to be the child of a multi-million-dollar international movie star? Or even better, what about the child of a really popular politician like the governor of California? Well, the children of Arnold Schwarzenegger got to experience both those things, and here's how it was for them.
Were you a strict dad when your kids were little? Were you strict?
Well, it depends what your definition is. For, I think, the way I grew up, I was lenient. But I think for American standards, probably strict.
Can you give me an example of what would be considered strict?
I think the thing that my kids bring up most often is that my son, for instance, did not make his bed. He had the nanny make the bed, and which was not allowed. I said the kids have to make their own bed. They have to scrub their own showers. They have to clean their own toilet, and they have to wash their own clothes. And So I came in one time and the bed was made so immaculately that I looked at that and I said, Patrick, did you do that? And he said, no, I didn't. You know, so I grabbed the mattress, I opened up the doors, grabbed the mattress and threw it out the balcony down into the swimming pool, you know. So that gives you an example, you know, just the kind of, so he had to kind of drag it up the mattress and the pillows. I threw everything out there.
You really went to bed,
everything,
is what happened,
exactly.
yeah.
And like when my daughter would have this habit of, you know, just taking her tennis shoes off and putting them right there by the fireplace. And I said, I'm not going to go and be a servant here. I said, so you know where the shoes go. They go into the mud room. I said, don't put them here. I said, because I do it one time, but I don't do it a second. So anyway, I took it a second time away, and then the third time I said, okay, look, I've told you now for 3 times. I told you I'm going to burn the shoes. So I took the shoes and I put them in the fireplace, and I burned the shoes.
Geez, you thought your dad was harsh. I mean, listen, this is actually kind of a trend in our culture right now. Apparently, the new generation of parents believe that the ones that went before them were a little too indulgent of their children, you know, all of those participation trophies and smartphones when you're in 2nd grade. So now there's a pendulum swing. In fact, in the United Kingdom, they've just announced that smartphones will be banned from all government schools. There are a lot of people who think that's a very good idea, and I get it. I mean, you don't want kids working on their Instagram while they're supposed to be learning math. But shouldn't teachers be able to just say, no, put your phone away, you can't have that in the classroom? Why do you need a federal government decree on such a thing? Also, I'm a little curious about why teachers are so in favor of the ban on smartphones in their classroom. Could it be because a lot of the things that they've said and done in the classroom over the last several years have been caught by one of their students on video, and then it went viral, exposing exactly what they don't want parents to see in the classroom? The fact is, teachers and the Organized Teachers Union and just activists in general don't want you to know what goes on in your kid's classroom. Take a look at this.
Let's talk about parental rights for a second, because it's become evident that it's being used currently in this fight against queer people, and especially queer kids, who need more protections than ever before. Like in Saskatchewan and in the US, parental rights are being used to thwart any rights of autonomy that the kid might have. And I'm sorry, but kids do have autonomy. We've already established this. For example, if a kid needs a blood transfusion and the parents don't want to, it's not the parent's right to refuse that blood transfusion for that kid, because it is life-saving. In the same respect, if a kid only needs to use a different name and pronoun in school, there might be a reason, and a good reason, they're not coming out at home. And they need a safe place to be themselves. And so, to hell with this idea of parental rights when it comes to kids who have their own consent and their own bodily autonomy and their own autonomy to their personhood that need to be protected.
Yikes. Please consider homeschooling. That's it for Larry. I'm Larry O'Connor. Why don't you follow, subscribe, and do all those things you're supposed to do on social media, and we'll be back tomorrow.